We're going to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit more about the Edna Lewis Foundation and what it's seeking to do. And this is actually a really special thing for me too, because there are 3 books I have on my bedside table. One of them is Julia Child's My Life in France. The second one is Judith Jones' memoir about editing Edna Lewis and Julia Child. And the third is Taste of Country Cooking. And I actually keep those on my bedside table because they're sort of like my inspirational guides as far as food writing is concerned. So it's a pleasure here today to welcome Miss Ruth, who will be joining us again in a moment, Chef Joe Randall, Chef Paul, I'm Farabach, and Farabach, and Jennifer Booker, who is the, tell me if I say this right, you are basically the ambassador chef for Georgia Grown, aren't you? Yes, and you're one of them, and you're an educator and a personal chef based out of Atlanta, correct? Okay, yay. Wonderful. How I'd like to really start this conversation is to talk about the legacy that, and Paul, you touched on it, the legacy that Edna, how she inspired you, about that you saw yourself in the pages of her book, Taste of Country Cooking. But one of the things she was able to do, she was able to break down barriers by breaking bread, basically, long ago. And so one of the things I was wondering is if y'all could talk about what kind of legacy you're trying to carry on with her foundation.
What testing, okay. Edna was very true to Southern cooking. She would tell people she was a Southern cook. And she'd tell people, I don't cook soul food, I cook Southern food. And she didn't allow people to call her cooking soul food. Now some of us who are old enough to understand, Edna was cooking Southern food in New York at Cafe Nicholson in 1948 for people like Truman Capote, William Faulkner, and these wonderful people enjoyed an opportunity to have some good homemade buttermilk biscuits, some good Southern fried chicken way up in New York. But the point is this, and I try and tell young chefs that I meet, everybody today is a new cook. In other words, everything they cook is new this and new that. And so one of the things the foundation wants to continue Edna's legacy in the sense that we want to preserve authentic Southern cooking. We don't want it to die off because these young cooks want to turn it into something else, and after a while, won't nobody know what real green beans are. Let me tell you what my joy is. When I make green beans, now my mother's from Virginia, so she started with a pot of water and a couple pieces of fat back. And she boiled that for a couple hours and put a little bacon grease and then throw the green beans in. But she cooked the green beans till they was done. And I was in Chicago once with Edna. She used pork shoulder, but she pulled one green bean out and bit on it. It was still a little hard. She said, they ain't done yet. So when I cook at the cooking school, I have people come to me and say things like, I'm tired of going to these restaurants, getting these green beans and jump off the plate when you try it, because they're still hard, you know. So those are some things that young cooks don't have appreciated for authentic Southern cooking. Even the writers, you know, they used to try and condemn Southern cooking talking about overcooked vegetables. If they had their way, every vegetable we ate would be raw. But I like cooked greens. I saw a fellow on television the other day. If y'all saw him, don't tell him I said so. He was talking about putting collard greens in some kind of salsa or chow chow, and he just chopped it up raw. And I just imagine how bitter that might be. But I like my collard greens cooked. And little ham hocks, little potato salad. We can make it work now. But this was what Edna was about. She was about authentic Southern cooking. And through the foundation, we do dinners around the country. And what we have, we invite chefs to come and cook authentic Southern cooking. There's nothing wrong with being creative with food, but you don't want to change it till it doesn't resemble what it's supposed to be. So that's my position.
Now, Paul, you're in a unique position. You're introducing at Big Jones. You really sort of do the Southern kind of cooking in a Midwestern sort of environment. How has that translated from, there's so much connection between your life in Indiana growing up on a farm and her life having grown up on a farm also, and then just the ideas of inclusion and acceptance and sort of the welcome table kind of aspect. What are you creating in Chicago that sort of carries that legacy forward?
Well, there's a lot of things I do because I study Southern cooking as much to feed my mind as I do to kind of keep the naysayers at bay. The people in Chicago, you get a lot. We have a lot of expatriated Southerners up there, and there always have been for 100 years. And expatriated Southerners come in and they love it because they immediately recognize what it is. Butter beans aren't foreign to them. They're happy to have a plate of grits. They might even ask for bacon grease on them, not butter. And they get it. But we get the overwhelming majority of our clientele actually are people who are from Chicago, from Michigan, from Ohio, whatever. They settled in Chicago and they've been to Mardi Gras or Jazz Fest in New Orleans, and they had gumbo at Acme Oyster House. And they come in and they get my gumbo, which we do a deep, muddy water Cajun gumbo that it looks like espresso. And especially during Mardi Gras, we get a lot of these food tourists who come in and they're just like, that ain't gumbo. So I really started studying Southern food to a large extent for that reason. But what really appealed to me about, The Taste of Country Cooking actually wasn't the first of her books I got. The first one I got was the one she did with Scott Peacock because it was a new release at that time. And Joe talked about authentic Southern cooking, and it's just that the authenticity. I think a different word for that is also sincerity, and just being true to the spirit of it, which is again, garden. One of my favorite magazines, Garden and Gun. Eating that fresh. What's right there at your arm's length, and preparing it in traditional ways. And I think that again, cooking in Chicago, there's such a tendency and such a pressure to do things that are new and innovative. And when I decided a few years ago, I said, you know what, I don't have time for all that. I'm going to cook traditional food. I'm going to do it the old way, like before there was electricity. That's how I'm going to cook. And the funny thing is, that's new. And in Chicago, it's like I came from outer space, and everybody wants to talk about what we're doing at Big Jones. So it was a little bit of serendipity there, but it's odd when something that is traditional and so historically based in your country becomes novel. And that's where we are with Southern food in Chicago. And but I'm with Joe. I like my green beans cooked.
Jennifer, for you as a young African-American chef, and you've got your first cookbook out, Field Feast of Foie Gras. What does it mean that someone sort of paved the way and set a standard that you can now sort of take the mantle and run with it?
Well, that's a lot of pressure, I'll be honest. Yeah. Growing up, I find all of this farm to table kind of tongue-in-cheek because that's how we grew up. And we ate food that we grew, and we ate pork that we raised and slaughtered, and we ate chicken eggs that came out of the chicken. So for this farm to table movement to be so big and so glamorous, to me it's a little amusing. But I'm glad and I'm happy because I honestly believe that food should taste like food. And as Paul was saying, it's fun and it's exciting and it's innovating to do new and fun things, but at the end of the day, you want a plate of hot food that soothes your soul and nourishes your body. So to have met Chef Joe years ago and to have discovered Edna Lewis and to be a part of this and to carry that mantle forward is outstanding. I know that writing this first cookbook for me was a tribute to my heritage because I took for granted the foods that we grew and the history that I had to be just normal. Didn't everyone do that? Didn't everyone have their family recipes and their family heritage? And as I got into this culinary life, I found, no, not necessarily so. So I feel very proud and very humble to be able to say a plate of pinto beans and ham hocks tastes like a plate of pinto beans and ham hocks. And yes, I've traveled and I even trained a year in Paris, but to sit down to that plate of pinto beans and ham hocks at the end of a long day makes me feel grounded. It makes me feel like I'm a part of American history and know that my people, whether we wanted to or not, created American cuisine. And I'm very excited about that. I'm so proud to have met Miss Ruth and to be a part of her legacy and Edna Lewis's legacy and continue to give this to my daughters and a heritage of wholesome food and pride and just continue to push that forward.
And Miss Ruth, we'll let you have the last word about what y'all are trying to do in carrying on the legacy of Edna, and really your family. It's really your family's legacy that is really inspiring people. And did y'all even have any idea when you were young and growing up on the farm that it would be carried this far forward?
I can say that I still enjoy what I did when I was young. I raised my own quail, my chickens, my ducks, and you know that eating homegrown food will prevent a lot of things. Edna and I were very close, and we're the two cooks in the family. Of course, since Edna's been gone, I'm still cooking. But the legacy of cooking, raising your own, I hope that it will come back into style. It only takes a few minutes to raise a chicken. It only takes a few minutes to raise a garden. But you'll find in your life, feeling better and healthy will make a difference in the time you spend doing it. If you go home with me, I'll pull some chicken out of the freezer and serve you some. And Chef Brenda knows that I still do banquets even at my age. We have a really Buddhist Baptist Association of 32 churches. And I still get the honor of being told you're going to do the banquet this year. But however, I'm praying that more people get involved while they're young, learning how to raise whatever you want to eat. And that was Edna's legacy. She learned it from our parents and our grandparents and our neighbors of Freetown when she was growing up. And it's still with you all here today. I know what you feel. I know what you feel. You're going to start doing it. I had one neighbor this spring, he got 40 chickens and he didn't realize what he got himself in. He said, Miss Ruth, you got baby chickens, I want some. And he got one. And he's basically put all of them in the freezer. And his wife told him, I'm not going to eat those chickens because you killed them. I said, baby, anything you ate, somebody killed. So you may as well get that off your mind, but it's still paying food when you eat it. And I hope from this today that somebody will be wanting to do something positive with your health by raising the food that you eat and get better. I appreciate you and I appreciate the honor of having us to talk. And I'm already 90. And I can still do it and you can too.
We've had, before this, we had the Farm to Table Forum where current chefs in Savannah and the farmers that work with them were talking about just this very thing and how to create this ethic here in Savannah. And I think having you here to talk about this long-time legacy and carrying it forward is so important. And I hope this discussion keeps going forward here, that you left your footprint here. I know Chef Joe is definitely carrying the gospel of that forward, and that we thank you all for being here, and you here on the panel for joining us. It's such an honor that Savannah Magazine got to host you here today. We really appreciate it, and thank you so, so much.